Exeggutor. I actually think this one is kind of funny, and I do dig how it looks, but the evolution doesn't really track. So you have this coconut tree looking creature, but instead of coconuts, it has 3 heads growing out of it. Pretty goofy, but highly unique. It evolves from Exeggutor, though, which is a pile of eggs, and for some reason, it turns into a tree, and the eggs become coconuts, I guess, which are Exeggutor's heads. Since when do trees come from eggs? It would make sense if Exeggutors were seeds. Maybe they're supposed to be, actually, but they don't look like it. They all look cracked like eggs do, and some of them look like they have like yolks in them. So why this choice? I'll never understand, but it is what it is. At least it's got a fun, lovable, dumb-looking face, or faces. Next up, we have Muck. This poison-type Pokemon evolves from Grimer, a Pokemon you probably forgot even existed because it looks identical to Muck, which everyone talks about more. What's the difference between these two? Well, Grimer looks a bit happier, seems to have a bit more pep in his step, or his slide, whatever you'd call it. Then you get Muck, who looks like his own poison has seeped into his brain. This guy looks tired, like he's just fed up with his own existence. Can't say I blame him though. If I lived in the Pokemon universe and was reincarnated as a pile of toxic goo and then became an even larger pile of toxic goo, I'd get pretty sad pretty quickly. Muck looks like he's just evolved from Grimer and was like, oh no, I still look like this. This is just who I am forever. I'm just Muck. I can understand his pain, but it doesn't make him any better of a person either. Or a Pokemon. Let's look at a super recent Pokemon, Gholdengo. What in the hell is this thing? To be fair, Gimmighoul is pretty ridiculous already, being that it's this little whatever that thing is that hides in a little treasure chest, but its evolution is, he goes from a bunch of coins into the cheese string man. It's supposed to be a bunch of gold, but I really don't get that vibe. If I didn't have any context, I'd think Gholdengo was a sentient piece of skinned ginger or something. When did Pokemon become so strange and confusing? I guess it always kinda was a bit strange and confusing if you thought about it for too long, but things have gotten out of hand, I tell you. Gholdengo also just makes me uncomfortable. Look at its empty eyes, the long spindly arms, the pineapple hair, and those childbearing hips. It looks like it's reaching out to grab me in places I don't want to be grabbed. By Gholdengo, anyway. Jinx, on the other hand, she can go to town. Alright, so if you think Magneton is bad, it's only fair to include Dugtrio too. I've always thought Diglett was kinda cute. It's a very simple looking Pokemon, but that simplistic design is part of what helps make it so lovable looking. It's fun that it pops out of the ground too. It's like one of those whack-a-moles. My first thought for a Diglett evolution, though, would be maybe it grows into like a scary looking mole type Pokemon. Something like Drillbur. That would have totally made sense. Instead, what we get, it's 3 Digletts. Again, what a disappointment. I don't want 3 Digletts. I want to get a cooler looking Pokemon, you know, for it to actually evolve. Where do these other 2 Digletts come from? How do they just form together like that? Be cooler, sorta, if you had to have 3 Digletts, level each one of them up, and then they become Dugtrio. That would have given a bit more relevance to this evolution, at least. Kinda sucks that this is it, too. It'd be cool to at least take Dugtrio and finally evolve it into something slightly more interesting. There's the Alola Digletts that form stupid haircuts when they transform into Dugtrio, but that's about it. Kingler takes the next spot on the list. This crustacean-esque Pokemon has that classic Gen 1 charm that I absolutely love design-wise. It's a nice-looking creature on its own, but considering what it evolves from, bit of a letdown. What does this crab Pokemon have that its predecessor doesn't? It gets a crown on its head and has a slightly larger claw. That's about it. Krabby has 2 evenly sized claws, and Kingler has 1 small claw and 1 extra large claw. It's virtually indistinguishable in appearance, and I hate that. It feels like they just didn't know what to do with him, so they were like, make one of his claws big. That's fine, that works. And then they just moved on. I guess, what can you do with a crab though, right? Just make it a bigger crab, I guess? I don't know. Speaking of evolutions, with barely any visual change though, the next on the list we have Dunsparce into Dudunsparce. This evolution is so boringly similar that it almost feels pointless. At least you get a bit of a surprise when your boring fish suddenly transforms into a colorful octopus, but here you get a larva-looking insect thing that evolves into a larva-looking insect thing, only now its eyes are slightly more open. And it has an extra prong on its chin. Big deal. What a letdown. It's the same design. It's incredibly lazy. I guess it's a bit more realistic this way. Animals in real life don't usually make extreme visual changes in a real short time span, but it's Pokemon. We expect more creativity than this. I kept going back and forth between these two, trying to spot visual changes, like I was doing one of those visual exercises you do in grade school. You have two very similar drawings with just slight differences that you have to try and spot. There are fan-made designs for possible Dunsparce evolutions that look far more interesting than this one. Also, the name barely changes. Dunsparce to Dudunsparce. Like, really? They just did not care about this guy at all. It was drawn out in 25 minutes, I guarantee it. Mousehold at number 1. Let's get this out of the way right away. I really hate the design here. This is probably the most generic, boring looking Pokemon I've ever seen. Pokemon are supposed to be inspired. Keyword inspired by actual animals, not just simple chibi style versions of them. Pikachu is meant to be mouse-like, but does it look just like a mouse? No, it looks like one of the most iconic creatures in anime. But here we start off with Tendamouse, which is this pair of mice. Looks like a Hello Kitty character, and then it evolves into Mousehold, and you'd hope that the evolution would at least have some kind of visual change, like maybe they combine and become this big scary Mega Mouse or something, but nope. This one plays into that one Pokemon, or two in this case, becomes more Pokemon when it evolves trope, and it really sucks here because I don't want to see any more of these things, but now you got 3 or even 4 of them. Except the extra 1 or 2 are small little miniature ones. Someone try to tell me this thing looks cooler than any Pokemon from Gen 1. Any? Not a chance. Even Metapod is better than this thing, and that's why it's coming in at number 1.